Yeah, you're good.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my office hours. I'm Char Nolan, just outside of Philadelphia, where today it's a beautiful 75 degrees. I've got the windows open, so you might hear some birds chirping. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's event. And before we begin, I'd like to give a special shout out to Richard Van, who is my producer today. And it's always fun working with Richard, and we have great conversations before we go live. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Richard and thank him for all of his help helping to set up today's event. So the questions look great. They're tons of fun. And, you know, when I am reviewing assessments from all of you, I make little notes to myself of things that might be topic for a discussion when we meet live. And I have a couple of things, and I have a fun new product to talk about. And I think I'm going to start doing these from my kitchen, because it seems that I bring half of my kitchen up to my office anyway. So I posted today on Twitter that I would start by telling a funny story. And my friend Deb has been a vegan for about 30 years. And she's really smart and organized, and she's always into testing new recipes. And she and I shared an office for the 10 years that I worked at Whole Foods Market. And this was long before I decided to become plant-based. And every day at 3 o'clock, she and I would have a cup of coffee, Allegro coffee from Whole Foods. And we would buy each other's coffee, you know, on alternating days and such. And one day she brought my coffee in, and I took a little sip of it and did as good a spit take as Lucille Ball. And I turned to her and I said, "What in the world is the matter with this coffee?" And she said, "I'm going to make a vegan out of you yet." She said, "That's almond milk." And I just thought to myself, oh my God, because almond milk, as you know, isn't as creamy. It doesn't give the same color. But before we dive into questions, I did want to say one thing. I've been making my own almond milk, and I'm going to give you this quick and easy recipe. And you don't even have to get out a pen or a pencil, but it's a cup of water, any kind of water. It's a tablespoon of unsweetened almond butter, whatever your favorite brand is, or if you get it out of the machine. And optional is 1 pitted date. And then you put everything into your food processor and you blend it until it is a creamy beige white color. You don't have to use a nut bag. Let me preface this by saying I have a Vitamix. So, you know, you could probably put steel wool into a Vitamix and it would probably do well. That 8-ounce glass of water makes about a 12-ounce container of almond milk that you can use in baking, in your cereal, in your hot beverage or whatever. So a cup of water, a tablespoon of almond butter, and 1 pitted date. And you will thank me so much because it's pennies to the dollar. There's a really wonderful brand out there that I love, but it is $9 for 3/4 of a quart. So 750 cc's. So this is a great way to save money. So hello and welcome, everyone. Before we go through some of the questions, just a few things that I wanted to talk about today. One of them is if you're doing the task for the agar-agar and Plant Pro, and you're either going to make a jellied dessert, or now you have the option of making a plant-based cheese with a Z. What you put that mixture in will really, really help you to find success at the end of the recipe. So these little silicone pans, I have a heart-shaped one and a round one, and I also have another one. I got these at the dollar store. They were 3 for $1. I guess today they would be 3 for $1.25. But I use them all the time to make plant-based cheeses or to make a small teeny weeny cake or whatever. And if you look at the plant-based cheese recipe, you'll notice that it was actually made in this receptacle. So it makes life really easy. What I don't suggest is using adorable little trays like this. Walmart, IKEA. They're fabulous for making ice cubes for a special beverage, or if you're making shrub or whatever. I know some people will make a chocolate dessert in them, but I don't recommend these for the cheeses because it's hard to get it out and it doesn't give you the clean sides that we're actually looking for in your finished product. So the other thing you can do if you don't have access to a dollar store is to take a 4 or 6 ounce glass jar, something similar to this one, line it with a plastic wrap if you're not opposed to plastic, and have everything tuck in well, and then pour your mixture into there, and then it will come out very easily, and then you just peel that off. So just wanted to go over that because cupcake tins will work, but they're hard to get out unless you have silicone cupcake tins. So that's the first thing. And then one of my favorite assignments in Ruby is I just love the Brussels sprouts assignment. And a few weeks ago, someone called me and asked if I could make them 5 pounds of Brussels sprouts. Because what I have learned over the years is that for some people, cooking seems complicated. And if my making 5 pounds of Brussels sprouts had this woman have a wonderful party, that's great. So I look at these beautiful Brussels sprouts. They're cut to perfection. The nubs are off, but I'm not going to take credit for it. Microplane, the people who make all kinds of kitchen appliances, Zester, for example, but this is a purposely made cutter for Brussels sprouts. And you just put the Brussels sprout down. I have a video up on my Instagram page that you can take a look at. It's perfection, and what a time saver, because I think it would have taken me a really long time to cut 5 pounds of Brussels sprouts. The recipe is great. I make it without oil, and my trick at the end is I take them out of the oven when they're done, and I put about a tablespoon of white balsamic glaze, and then it just kind of coats it, and it gives it that shiny appearance of perhaps having oil in it, but it doesn't, because I find for some people, eating food without oil, the appearance can sometimes be different. So the tablespoon of the white balsamic gives it a nice glisten and tastes absolutely delicious. So that's my story. Sticking to it, and let's see what's going on next. This is from Dorothy R. And she had a really good question. And it was about the conversion of substituting maple syrup or date paste for white or brown sugar. When a recipe calls for applesauce, can homemade applesauce be substituted equally? I make a lot of applesauce because sometimes we forget to eat apples, Dorothy. So you'll have a much richer texture because homemade applesauce isn't as watery as commercial applesauces. If you look at the ingredients, there's apples, water, and sometimes they have a preservative or something else. So make your own, and you'll have a nice flavor. And as far as the conversion, first, I'm going to say that using date sugar is a good thing to use, or using maple sugar. Both are available on the market these days, and they don't change the texture, and they give you a nice sweet flavor. However, if you are using maple syrup, you would use 3/4 of a cup of maple syrup to 1 cup of sugar, and that would be the ratio that you would want to follow. So you can work on the other fractions, but I'm starting with that as a baseline. And I hope that's helpful to you. Thank you so much for your question. It was a very good question. Oh, this is from Marcy J. Hey, Marcy, how are you? I am experimenting with whole food, plant-based, gluten-free, ready-made goods for my organic market, looking for more ideas to add to the menu. So, this is a great question because I just got the other day the new Forks Over Knives magazine, which I suggest that you subscribe to, because it's really like a mini cookbook. But the nice thing is that I made these strawberry blonde brownies, and at the top of the page, it had a conversion if you were going to use, if you're going to use a gluten-free flour. So I thought that was good. I very, very, very rarely cook with gluten flours. So my go-tos are homemade oat flour, and that's what I pretty much use all of the time. So in terms of it, your kitchen becomes almost like a lab, Marcy, in that you're just always experimenting and taking things to your friends and neighbors and having them try things. But last year, Dee from Student Services and I worked on a gluten-free pie crust. We worked on gluten-free biscuits for a fruit crisp. So I think that it's what you see in the conventional wheat world and you really like, just sort of move the needle a little bit and look at things that you like to make. Going around right now on the internet is a great recipe for oatmeal tortillas. And I will send you personally or I'll give it to Richard to post, but you just put oats and water in a blender and then you make these beautiful tortillas. So even though corn tortillas already are gluten-free, it's nice to know that you can have some options so that you can make economical foods in your own kitchen. So very good question. Oh, hi, Marion. Marion is exploring buying a freezer, particularly the size and style, upright or chest type. I just saw that Costco or one of those places is having a sale on a coffin. That's what we call it in the grocery world. So it would be a chest type freezer for $227. Not only do I store flour, but I store rice. I store dried fruits. I store anything that might have bug appeal to it. So those are my go-tos, and I use either a container or I will use a freezer bag or sometimes wrap it in a wrap that I like. You'll save a ton of money and things will keep much, much longer. Another good question. So before we go on to the next question, let's see, where did that go, Richard? Well, we'll do it at the end. I see where it is. Okay. Hi, Chef Char. Great to see you. Oh, hi, Terralyn. How are you? It's nice to see you too. Can you talk about how you organize your freezer, pantry, and fridge? It is part of the classes to get organized, and I'm curious if you have it all figured out. And can you give some tips? I don't have it all figured out. I'm always buying new containers, and now I'm in the process of getting rid of plastic containers and only using glass containers. The one thing that I do recommend to help be a little organized is the minute that you get home, strip those kale greens or strip that chard or whatever, wash them, dry them, roll them in a towel and place them in a plastic bag and keep them in your refrigerator. So a week from today, you're not looking through your refrigerator. Not that this has ever happened to me, just kidding. So that you have it that way. And the crisper is probably a good place. I clean mine out every Sunday night because there's always a lost, runaway carrot or something like that. And I'll just throw it all in a pot and make stock. I think that if you go back to one of your very first assignments, which was, organizing your kitchen, think of some of the things that you used for that assignment and how they were successful for you and continue to carry through with that. So that was another good question. Thank you so much. Can we talk about cookware? I have primarily good quality Emerald Lagasse nonstick cookware and one cast iron pan. Demos use mostly stainless steel pans. I have also read recipes asking for a Dutch oven. Is there a suitable substitute? So when I saw that question, I ran downstairs into my kitchen. This is a mini, I call it a faux creuset because it's not Le Creuset. And if you live in the mid-Atlantic region of the East Coast, or you live in Germany, I shop at a store called Lidl, L-I-D-L. And this beautiful mini Dutch oven was $14.99. And I bought them in different sizes because I absolutely love cooking in these pans. So the benefit of having a cast iron stove is that they retain heat when you're cooking. They're much better for heat distribution. You can bake, you can braise, you can do all kinds of things. And I even at the top of the page gave Richard the recipe for the Alaska from scratch overnight bread that you make in a cast iron pan. You heat the pan up for an hour to 450 degrees. So my first suggestion is go to thrift shops, look for sales. But even when Le Creuset is on sale, it's still very, very expensive. I have some pieces that are very, very old and they have held up very well over the years. So look for a sale. The other thing I wanted to say is a few weeks ago, one of my friends from the pool that I swim at called me and said, we're moving, come to my kitchen, take whatever you want. And I thought, oh, well, I got to her house and her kitchen must have been about 600 square feet. And it was all organized. She had tons of things. So I had never used, it's called the green pan, and they are lined with ceramic. And she said, oh yeah, I get them at Home Goods. They're only like $14 or $15. And I actually cooked in it and have to say that it was a pretty joyful experience. Most of my pots and pans, I don't have any more Teflon-y things, except when I teach, I use an induction stove top, and this doesn't take an induction stove. So you have to kind of look around to see what you like. I don't have like a glorious pot set that you might see given away on a game show, but my pots and pan collection pretty much reaches the needs of things that I need to do. So, but look into this green pan. It was a lot of fun. It's not Teflon. And of course, you're going to use wooden utensils with it because you don't want to scratch it. Remember, don't use plastic utensils when you're working with heat. All right. Wow. What sort of oats can you use for the tortillas? Just plain old ordinary old-fashioned oats. And let me just say that they are totally delicious. Richard, I think if you Google oatmeal tortillas, this easy breezy recipe is going to come up, and it looks like maybe it would be something fun for people to have. Okay, Tara Lynn is back. If I'm storing my flowers in fridge, can I stretch the expiration date out a bit? I bought a lot when I was in the EVD class and I'm reaching those dates now. There's always a controversial question about the expiration date or the sell-by date and what it says. I think that if you're keeping them in your refrigerator or your freezer, they probably will last a little bit longer. So I bet you made some beautiful desserts in the everyday vegan dessert class. I'm always in awe of the photos that I see. All right. What is a substitution ratio when cooking maple syrup or date paste instead of white or brown sugar? Dorothy, I think that we already answered this question, but the ratio is 3/4 of a cup of maple syrup equals 1 cup of sugar. All right. So the next question is, what are some of your recommendations for plant-based pizza sauce and toppings? So Jane, back in the day, Rip Esselstyn, who was then known as Engine 2, sold a really wonderful whole wheat pie crust at Whole Foods, which is only now available at Go Plant Strong Foods. And it comes with an oil-free, low-sodium, delicious pasta sauce that comes in a little packet. The only thing that is a deterrent for me is that you have to buy 6 of them. So 6 pizza crusts, and they're really nice size. They're like about a 12 or 14-inch pizza crust. They're really, really delicious, and you can use those. Muir Glen used to have a mushroom pasta sauce that had 0 fat in it, and the sodium ratio was very, very good. So sodium ratio being in the plant strong world a calorie per milligram of sodium. Um, The Whole Foods Market, the 365 brand, they make a plain marinara that has 1.5 grams of oil in it. If it's the best thing you can find, I would go with something like that. But it's so easy to make your own. All you need is tomatoes, crushed tomatoes, whatever kind of tomatoes you like, a little tomato paste, and some wonderful spices that can be dried, oregano, basil, garlic, rosemary. So make your own and then freeze it. And I think you'll be much, much happier with that. Trader Joe's, by the way, has recently discontinued their whole wheat crust. It did have a gram of fat in it, even though it was an oil-free ingredient list. So I'm not sure why that happened. But anyway. Hello, Chef Char Nolan. I'm enjoying the Forks Over Knives plant-based class. Oh, good. At the very moment, I am on the methods of cooking. Could you repeat the time of cooking, blanching, then parboil and tender? That is for my assignment pretty soon. Well, I have to say, Elodie, that everything is pretty much ironed out really well in the assignment, and it explains exactly what you need to do. This is specifically for broccoli. So if I can just shine light on that assignment for a second, a couple of important features are: one, when it says to organize your broccoli, that means that we want to see each piece of broccoli lined up as though you were getting ready to play Jenga. So just very organized in the row. And the reason is that we like to look at the color of the broccoli. We like to look at the length of the stem. We like to see if you're using fresh broccoli or not, because that can have an impact on your entire assignment. So for me personally, in my own kitchen, I blanch for a minute, I parboil no more than 2, and the tender that I like is 3 to 4 minutes. So hopefully that should help you. Always remember to have that bowl of ice at the ready, so that as soon as you pick them out of the boiling water, you can shock them and help them maintain their beautiful, beautiful green color. And you know, the funny thing about this assignment is that every student will write, almost every student will write, oh my gosh, I grew up eating my mother's gray broccoli, or oh my goodness, I never knew how to cook broccoli before. So I think that the broccoli assignment is a cornerstone assignment in the entire curriculum and will carry you through many other things, because you can stir fry with it. You can make a crudité platter. You can serve it as a side dish or whatever. So anyway, it's a very good question. Thank you so much. Okay, this is from Elaine F. WellYourWorld.com has 2 different salt-free, oil-free pasta sauces, also SOS-free salad dressings, Indian sauce, Asian sauce. I don't know this website. I think in the grocery world sometimes maybe that's where a lot of people shop, but this is a very good resource, and thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Okay. This is another good question. Could you let me know what is medium to high heat when using a ceramic or induction stove top? Yours goes from 1 to 9. So yours doesn't read out the temperatures, because the one that I have reads out the temperatures, and I generally cook between 350 to 400 degrees, but never any more. The other thing is you can cook by sound. You know, you can listen to the sizzle in the pan, and if it's moving too quickly and it sounds too loud, then you should just turn it down a little bit. So I don't know what the 1 to 9 corresponding numbers are, but I would say 350 to 400 is what I generally use. And of course, doing a mercury ball test beforehand to understand how hot the pan is. All right. So this has to be one of my favorite questions. Hermela, good afternoon. Hi, Chef Char. What is the danger using a little bit of oil in cooking? Well, we'll start with this. We all have a different concept of what a little bit of oil is. For some of us, a little bit of oil is 1/8 of a teaspoon. But for those of us who use no oil in our cooking, 1/8 of a teaspoon is too much. in Dr. Esselstyn's landmark book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, he always says that moderation kills. Sounds a little drastic, but you understand what he's saying. So if you have heart disease or any other sort of, and I'm not a physician and I'm not a registered dietitian, but I can tell you what I know, oil can be an irritant to the inner linings of your artery. And if you are trying to heal from cardiovascular disease, a best practice by many physicians, including Dr. Esselstyn, brings to the forefront totally omitting oil in food, cooking with it, using it in a salad or anything else like that. This is probably one of the more controversial questions we get. I will say this, don't use olive oil, but eat an olive, because you always want to also look at foods that are maintained in their whole food, not being processed. So you can always feel free to email me, Hermela. I would also suggest going to www.dresselstyn.com. The leadoff topic on his homepage is why no oil? And he will probably say it 100 times better than I ever would, but a very good question. Thank you so much. Oh, Laura C., hello. When grilling without oil, I had issues of sticking. I tried a spray bottle of water gently, then stock and no improvement. In order to get the desired sear, I couldn't turn the flame down without drying out what I was grilling. Any advice? Well, first of all, I would love to know what you were grilling, and would love to know what kind of grill you were on, because I have a fake Le Creuset grilling pan that I use on the top of my stove, and it grills perfectly. And I put little teeny drops of water in it just to sort of liven it up a little bit. So I don't grill on a barbecue grill because I don't have one. So I grill my vegetables for those beautiful grill marks using a grill pan for my stove top. So the heat on if you're using an outdoor grill, the heat is pretty intense. So rather than having it over the fires, you might want to move it to the edges where the temperature is a little bit less and you can control the temperature a little bit more. I think that might work. Those would be some thoughts that I would use for that. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, char@ruby.com. Hi, Chef Char. Is it healthy to use honey in our cooking or substitute for sugar? Hello again, Hermela. So first I'll start off by saying that for people who are ethical vegans, they never use honey because some vegans believe that honey is an animal product. Instead of using honey, I would suggest to use maple syrup or to use date syrup, which is sometimes called SILAN. The texture and viscosity of the date syrup is very close to honey. If you want to use honey, that's something else that you can do as well. So I hope that is helpful to you. So you have another very good question. So Elodie has another good question. In the Forks Over Knives recipes, they call for russet potatoes, but we do not have that variety here in France, to my knowledge. Has it got a firm flesh? It's a russet is a very firm, sturdy potato. If I were a potato, I'd be a russet potato. But I did look up the Charlottes, and they look like they're very popular in salads. And also, if you go to www.lovepotatoes.com, Richard has posted the website. There's a full diagram and legend of what potatoes work really well, and they mostly look like European potatoes to me. But here's what I have to say. You know how they say a rose is a rose is a rose? Sometimes I don't have russet potatoes, and when I'm making something, it still comes out really well if I use a Yukon Gold or a Red Bliss or whatever the potato is. But the russet has a really tough skin. very different than if a Yukon Gold or a fingerling or whatever. So very good question. Thank you so much. Your salt preference. Well, I don't have a preference because I don't cook with salt. For a finishing salt, what would you choose, Malden or Fleur de Sel? Does it really make a difference? I just started using kosher diamond crystal for cooking. I do like it better than the coarse grain salt or Himalayan salt. So can't answer the question because really the only type of salt that I cook with would be a low sodium tamari because it's gluten free. And the one thing to think about, the World Health Organization is now recommending that consumers use no more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. And in a teaspoon of salt, there's just a little bit more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium, whereas a teaspoon of low sodium tamari has about 750 milligrams and kind of gives you the same impact of flavor that salt would do. So I think using, if I'm not mistaken, the diamond crystal is iodized, which might also be another helpful thing. But I'm sorry, Charisse, that I can't answer that question more authoritatively about salt, and that's just because I don't use salt. My goal in life is to remain as healthy as I can, and for me personally, using salt has just really helped me maintain, for me, an optimum level of health. But it sounds like you're really good in the kitchen and you know all kinds of things to do. So I think that that's really, really wonderful. Charisse, again, good afternoon. Your preference of sugar or sweetener. So this morning I baked some 4-ingredient oatmeal cookies, and I buy a quart of maple syrup, and it lasts about 2 months. So maple syrup is my go-to. I also like date syrup. And I don't use any coconut sugar. Some people do. But I think that maple sugar and date sugar are good examples of things that you could use. Okay, could you give the brand? Yes, the brand of it's Microplane. It's the same people that make Microplane. It's Microplane. You probably have a zester in your drawer that is made by the same company. But you will love this. You will absolutely love it. Went really fast. Thank you for asking that question. Okay. So this is, wait, I just have to share something that I wanted to, that was on my mind. You know, when I read the Forks Over Knives assignments, I love reviewing them. And many of you share personal stories about your own journeys to becoming healthier and how much the recipes that we have and how helpful they are. So yesterday, I met an old friend who was my neighbor for many years. And we hadn't seen each other because she had moved away. And she was passing through town, and we met for lunch. And I found myself in the middle of the conversations. If there was a bubble above my head, it would have said, "Oh my gosh, this is the most boring conversation I've ever had." And she had all kinds of ailments, and she chose like the worst thing to eat for lunch. And, you know, I don't want to take anybody's inventory, but I'm speaking for myself that I'm just so glad that I follow a whole food, plant-based, no oil, no salt diet, because it really does make a difference in how you feel and how you think and what you do. And so for those of you in Forks and Plant Pro who, you know, express the joy that you're feeling and feeling better or having fun learning new recipes, I have to say that for you, this is only the beginning and things will only get more exciting for you. So anyway, FYI, I bought, you bought the Great Jones ceramic baking pans that you recommend, and you absolutely love their nonstick quality and cleanup. The cleanup is amazing. They asked how I learned about it and told them your name. Oh, well, thanks, Lois. I don't know anything about them, just that they're like three sisters who got together to make this pot company, but they have a really, really good product and they have thought it out long and hard. And I do have a Great Jones soup pot that I really, really like. And those baking pans are just something else. So good for you. You'll have to post some photos of things that you have made with it. This is from Tara Lynn. Combining gluten-free flours gives me the best results in most baking recipes. Would you concur? I'm not, as you know, I'm not a baker, but I like to bake. And I think that you're absolutely right about that. The one thing about combining flours, though, is keeping very accurate notes about the ratios on things that you use, but it really helps the texture, helps the rise and other things. So that's a good point. Is there a seasoning that can be added to vegan burgers that will give them a more beefy flavor? So let's roll back for a second. Besides the beefy flavor, I would love to know what you're making your veggie burgers out of, because sometimes the texture of your veggie burger, people have something in their minds, not only flavor, but also texture. So I would recommend two things. One would be to either use the brand I prefer is Wright's, WRIGHT''S, Wright's Liquid Smoke. It's sodium free and it gives it a very nice barbecue-y kind of flavor. If you don't have that and you don't live near a grocery store that carries it, smoked paprika will do the same exact thing. So you might find that very helpful to use as well. I find adding a little bit of quinoa and some mushrooms that have been cooked and squeezed out, because you don't want to have a wet veggie burger, but that mushroom meat is very good. By the way, if you go to ruby.com, there is a great recipe called mushroom meat, and it is ground mushrooms and sunflower seeds, and it's seasoned with cumin and tamari, and it is the best. So if you're going to be having a Taco Tuesday night, that's something to think about. And the flavor of that is really, really good. So, all right. Oh, well, welcome, Deborah C. This is Deborah C.'s first time here. May I also learn the recipe for the oat tortillas, and which glass storageware are you finding best for organizing and storing? Well, here's the problem with some glass. Some glass has a glass bottom and some of it has a plastic top. Cuisinart makes beautiful glass storage dishes that come with bamboo tops, and they have a nice vacuum seal that when you put it on, you hear that little swoosh, like you heard from Tupperware, back in the day. So I would go to Cuisinart.com and look at their glass storage system. Comes in all different sizes, and I have fun using them. So I hope that that's a helpful question to you. Let's see. Do I have a favorite no oil salad dressing? I'd like to use fresh fruit and dressing, but hard to find them. So if you go on the Ruby site to just type in Ruby no oil dressings, I have two favorites. My first favorite is the Dijon Vinaigrette. It's a beautiful, beautiful dressing. I add a little bit of flax meal to it because I like a dressing that has a little thickness to it. And I find that, I think last month when we were all here, I showed you a milk frother that I use to sort of whip up my dressing so that they have a nicer texture. So I do like that. And then the balsamic vinaigrette in the program is also very, very good. But instead of using a dark vinaigrette, a dark balsamic, I use a white balsamic, and it gives it a much lighter flavor. And I find that aside from the flavor, its appearance looks better on food. So that's just my own quirkiness, but I do like the flavor and texture of both of those. Hope that's helpful. As for the fresh fruit, the balsamic vinegar, I believe, has a fruit paste in it. So there's automatic sweetness that would look lovely. And I think using a white balsamic would be the trick for you. Oh, I noticed that cashews are used in a lot of plant-based recipes. I'm allergic to peanuts and tree nuts. Are there any non-nut substitutes? So that's a great question. When we were developing some recipes last summer, I made an entire series of plant-based cheeses using garbanzo beans. And the reason why you want to use garbanzo beans is that they have a nice firm texture to them, and their skin is sturdy, and they worked out beautifully and made beautiful cheeses. So you can either use a cannellini bean, a little softer. For example, there are some white sauces. You can create a nice texture using the beans, and it won't disturb the flavor too much. And then, of course, you don't have to worry about any kind of nut allergies or anything like that. So, Elodie, let me answer your question. You're very, very kind. And you know, I follow a few expats who live in Paris, and it is definitely on my list of places to go and visit. It looks like a beautiful, beautiful city. So thank you for your very kind words. You're very kind. Would love to see your favorite veggie burger recipe with a great texture. Mine are not mushy. So if you go into, hold on a second, in the Engine 2 cookbook, let's see if I can get directly to, oh, here it is. So this is the Yo Adrian burger, and it's my recipe that I contributed to Rip's cookbook. So it's got a lot of kale in it, and it's got quinoa. And then I don't like mushy burgers. I don't want to eat a mashed potato burger, if you get my drift. It has grated sweet potatoes in it. So the grate adds a lot of texture to it, along with the quinoa. And of course, I have oats in it. And the real trick is you put it in I weigh and measure my burgers because I want them to all cook evenly and at the same time. But then after I weigh them, I put them inside a cookie cutter so that they're all perfectly round. And you cook them 20 minutes on one side, but here's the trick. You flip it and then you flatten it out. So this way, they get a really nice texture on them, and they have a nice crisp crust to them, and you don't feel like you're biting into some mashed potatoes. So that's a great question. Where do I get my cookbooks from? Well, sometimes if I have a recipe in a cookbook, I get a free cookbook. And I just finished reading, because it was such a good cookbook, the Korean Vegan, which is a fabulous story about Joanne, Joanne Molinaro, I think is her name. But it's a fascinating story about how she grew up in a Korean household, and she was a lawyer. And I like a cookbook that has a couple of stories in it. All of the Esselstyns are very good storytellers. I know a lot of cookbook authors who are always happy to share cookbooks with me. And then sometimes I'll head to a real bookstore and see what's new, what I don't have. I think I may have shared in our last call that my friend Jane Esselstyn has a new cookbook coming out August 23rd called Women Wellness Warriors. And I have a little story, and I have a recipe of my grandmother's garbanzo bean recipe. So, and you know, I have, I manage a lot of social media accounts, so I need to be in the know of what's where and who's doing what. So when I'm cruising the internet for input for accounts that I manage, I'm always, writing things down like, oh, this looks like a good book or whatever. So, but support your local bookseller. Go to a real live bookstore. That's my commercial for the day. I don't fry the veggie burgers, Melissa. I take my square sheet pan, I line it with parchment paper, and that's what I do. And I also have an air fryer. If you have an air fryer and you love your air fryer, by the way, on Facebook, there is a great page called Fat Free Air Fryer. And if you are on Facebook, go visit Fat Free Air Fryer, and you'll see incredible looking dishes that people make without using oil or without frying. So another good question, Phyllis. And, I just have to turn back the hands of time for a second and say that 13 years ago, when I first became plant-based, it was like living in a forest without a light, because it was just so different. And the awareness of, plant-based foods and methods of cooking and so forth and so on. So, by your being here tomorrow, I hope you'll tune in to Chris Rodriguez's class. And on Thursday, Fran has another good class. Gather as much information as you can, because it's just so much fun to learn. So anyway, Plant Pro has a lesson that teaches seasoning with salt at every layer. I do agree with you about no salt. I tried whole food plant-based, no salt, no oil and sugar, and it was the hardest thing for me was the no salt. But I love your idea of just using tamari. I forget which brand tamari it is now, but it used to be that it just said low sodium, but now there's one that says 50% less, 25% less. Remember that salt and sugar are acquired flavors, so that over the years, we had all acquired sort of like an appreciation and fondness for salty foods. The reality is that when I eat out, sometimes I have to be really specific and make other guests at the table roll their eyes at me, and I'll have to say, could you tell the chef not to put any salt on whatever, or could you ask him to do this or ask her to do this or whatever. So but I think that you're right. Cherise, do the tamari. Let me know how you make that. I'll be curious to hear about that. Oh, one last thing, talking about tamari and soy sauce. We've discussed this before. It really does make a difference where you buy your tamari and the brand that you use. If you go to a place like H Mart, the world's largest Asian grocery chain in the world, they have zillions and zillions of kinds of different. If you go to a big box store, and I won't name any names, but if you go to a big box store, the first ingredient on their house brand soy sauce is sugar. So I always think about somebody who might be a type 2 diabetic who is given up salt, and they're using soy sauce from this grocery store, and they can't manage their sugar. That soy sauce might be the culprit. So again, we go back to the basics of label reading. So if you're in the Philadelphia area, I don't want to sound like a commercial, but I do some work at the South Philly Food Co-op, and I'm taking people on a tour on Saturday, July 16th, and the tour is free. So there's that. Plant Pro, okay, we did that already. Is there, and Cherise, one last thing. When I was a student at Ruby almost 9 years ago, at the top of every summary, I would write, recipe made without salt, recipe made without oil or whatever, just so that the instructor would know that perhaps I met different challenges with the recipe, and I didn't want to follow the recipe as it was written because I didn't want to waste any food. So I felt that that was an important thing to do. But thank you for bringing that to our attention very much. So, we're doing really, really well. It's 1:50. One last thing. I wanted to show you this Anchor measuring cup that I have. And this is perfect for anyone. If we and convert our recipes to include grams and milliliters, et cetera, et cetera. But this has teaspoons, it has ounces, it has cc's or milliliters, and it has tablespoons and teaspoons. So it's just a really helpful tool. And I have several of them. I always joke to my husband that my grandfather's wine glasses, my Italian grandfather's wine glasses, were little teeny weeny jelly jars. And this is what that reminds me of. But it's made by Anchor and it costs about $2. Okay. This is from Peggy B. Is there a good reference for using spices? I do not have a sense of smell and only very limited sense of taste, but always, just always that way. I am recipe dependent for spicing foods when I cook for my family. Well, my recommendation would be that if you're following a recipe, I would follow to the letter the amount and the type of spice that they are recommending. By the way, going back to that refrigerator questions, there are some spices that I do keep in the refrigerator just because they may have been expensive and I may have gotten them at like a specialty shop and I want them to last a long time. If you are recipe dependent, Peggy, I would suggest following the recipe, but shoot me an email at char@ruby.com and let me send you a couple of resources that I have given to other students. So I hope that's helpful. So we need a little bit of a drum roll because we're coming into the last question. Wow, we did a really good job today. We're almost on time. It's Hermela again. Hello again. I don't know if you know eating by your blood type. I was curious about it. I am supposed to eat according to my blood type by meat, eggs, poultry, seafood, but I am interested in being vegan and working on it. Am I missing anything? So I can't really address the blood type because I don't know about it, and also because it involves meat, eggs, and poultry and seafood. I think that if you are looking for and others of you feel free to chime in, but I really do find the Engine 2 original book written by Rip Esselstyn in 2009, I find that to be a really good template for navigating a plant-based lifestyle. And Jane Esselstyn and Ann Esselstyn wrote a complement book to prevent and reverse heart disease. It's called the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease Cookbook. And that really lays everything out. My suggestion is go get a new cookbook. I like Body on Fire by Monica Agrawal, MD. She's a cardiologist in Florida. The parentheses about her is that she single-handedly implemented a whole food plant-based diet in her hospital, and she works in a university health system. So this way, patients have a better way of finding good food, because, you know, when you're a patient in a hospital and they serve you whatever, you think, well, it must be good because I'm in the hospitals. They wouldn't feed me food that wasn't good for me. But if you take a look, and one of my favorite assignments is the hospital menu. I love that assignment so much, and I love to see how creative you all get with that. But cookbook, 5 recipes, pick a salad, pick a soup, pick a dessert, pick an entree, etc., and just try them out. And I would also, if you get that cookbook or have a cookbook, make the recipe, the ingredient list, and pick those ingredients by how they're related. So you're not buying, you know, $40,000 worth of grocery, but that you've got this list, you've got your groceries, and boom, boom, you can, you know, go on and do it. So we are coming to an end. I have to thank Richard again. He posted all of the things. I want to give a shout out to Ruby graduate Kathy Caton Graziani, who has a cookbook that has been published by Rizzoli. Rizzoli is a very popular New York publishing company. And another graduate of Ruby, Vicki Brecht, I believe. I only know her by Vicki, but she sent me the PDF of her cookbook, and the recipes are just fabulous and delicious. So if you want to support a Ruby grad grads who've worked very hard on their cookbooks, Richard has posted those. I'll be seeing everyone at the end of July. I hope that you're starting off with a great summer, and keep cooking and keep sending in those beautiful assignments. Everybody have a great day. Signing off from Philadelphia. It's me, Char Nolan. Talk to you soon.